tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So continuing with Buddhadhamma by Bhikkhu P.A. Payutto, translated by Robert Moore. Chapter 11, Happiness. And now we starting on page 883, number 7, Path to Supreme Happiness. And today I'll be reading section A, Developing More Refined Forms of Happiness. And after that, I will be reading excerpts from the Nikāya Gata Sati Sutta, Majjhima Nikāya 119, Mindfulness Immersed in the Body. Developing more refined forms of happiness. Before describing more refined forms of happiness, it is helpful here to describe a basic form of happiness, sukha, and suffering, dukkha, that has a bearing on all other forms of happiness. The following definition was given by Venerable Sariputta after he was asked by a wandering ascetic the following question. Friend Sariputta, what is happiness in this Dhamma and discipline, and what is suffering? Dissatisfaction, friend, is suffering in this Dhamma and discipline. Satisfaction is happiness. When there is dissatisfaction, anabhirati, friend, this suffering is to be expected. When walking, one does not find happiness or contentment. When standing still, when sitting, when lying down, when in a village, when in the forest, when at the foot of a tree, when in an empty hut, when in the open air, when among a group of monks, one does not find happiness or contentment. When there is dissatisfaction, this suffering is to be expected. But when there is satisfaction, abhirati, this happiness is to be expected. When walking, one finds happiness and contentment. When standing still, when sitting, when lying down, when in a village, when in the forest, when at the foot of a tree, when in an empty hut, when in the open air, when among a group of monks, one finds happiness and contentment. When there is satisfaction, this happiness is to be expected. Following is a list of analogies for the happiness inherent in the various stages of meditative absorption, jhana. The last step before the attainment of jhana is the abandonment of the 5 hindrances, nivarana. And then there's a list of the 5. Sensual desire, kama chanda, ill will, vyapada, sloth and torpor, tina mida, restlessness and worry, udacha kukucha, and doubt, vichakiccha. When one abandons the 5 hindrances, one experiences peace and contentment, which is the basis for experiencing the happiness of jhana. There are 5 similes for this initial peace and contentment. 1. Similar to the joy, this is the first simile, similar to the joy and delight of a person who has borrowed money from a creditor, achieved success in his work, and paid off his debts with money to spare for supporting his family. 2. Similar to the joy and delight of a person who has recovered from a serious illness and regains his appetite and physical strength. 3. Similar to the joy and delight of a person who has been released from imprisonment, is able to travel about freely, and does not incur a fine. 4. Similar to the joy and delight of a person who has been emancipated from slavery, gains freedom and independence, and is able to move about as he pleases. 5. Similar to the joy and delight of a wealthy person who has carried his wealth across a long, dangerous, and remote area and arrives safely at his destination. From here, one experiences the increasingly refined forms of happiness inherent in the 4 fine material jhanas. In the first jhana, which is accompanied by applied attention, vitakka, sustained attention, vichara, bliss, piti, joy, sukha, and one-pointedness, etaggata, a practitioner's body is permeated and suffused with bliss and joy. No part of the body is left untouched by this bliss and joy. This is similar to someone who in the morning sprinkles water on bath powder contained in a bronze basin. By evening, the moisture has pervaded it inside and out, so that none of the powder is dispersed. In the second jhana, which is accompanied by bliss and joy and one-pointedness, a practitioner's body is thoroughly permeated and suffused with the bliss and happiness born of concentration. This is similar to a deep lake whose waters spring entirely from below, with no other inflow, including rainfall from above. The cool fountain of water welling up would drench, steep, and pervade every part of the lake. In the third jhana, which is accompanied by joy and one-pointedness, a practitioner's body is thoroughly permeated and suffused with joy divested of bliss. This is similar to a lotus plant growing in the water, immersed in water, and nourished by water. The cool water drenches, steeps, and pervades every part of the plant, from its tip to its roots. In the fourth jhana, which is accompanied by equanimity, upekkha, and one-pointedness, a practitioner pervades the entire body with a pure, bright mind. This is similar to a person who is completely covered from the head down with an immaculate white cloth. Following on from the happiness of the 4 fine material jhanas is the happiness of the 4 formless jhanas, which similarly becomes increasingly more refined. Although the happiness of jhana is superior and more profound than sense pleasures, it has defects and flaws. It is not yet perfect happiness. The Buddha stated in the noble discipline, Arya Vinaya, the 5 strands of sensual pleasure, kama, guna, are called the world. In other words, the world is equivalent to the 5 sense pleasures. One who is attached to sense pleasure is still bound up in the world. One who has attained fine material jhana or formless jhana is described as one who reaches and dwells in the zenith or limit of the world. He or she is still connected to the world, however, and has not yet escaped or transcended it. A person who passes beyond the last formless jhana, who attains the cessation of perception and feeling, sanya vediyata nirodha, is free from the mental taints through discerning the truth with wisdom, is described as one who has reached the end of the world and has transcended the bonds that bind beings to the world. The ultimate and complete form of happiness belongs to someone whose mind is liberated, the happiness of one who has realized nibbana. This happiness includes the happiness associated with the cessation of perception and feeling, which is the 10th kind of happiness mentioned in the list above. The most notable defects of the happiness of jhana are the following. And no, I'm not going to read through all of them, but I'll just read through a few of them. The happiness of jhana is still not completely free. It is still restricted and constrained by perception and other mental factors present in jhana. Although the happiness of jhana is a form of non-material happiness, it is still subject to attachment, and it may give rise to grasping, upadana. It can be an impediment for realizing nibbana and perfect happiness. It is inadequate and must be transcended or abandoned. And the last point, jhana It is a conditioned phenomenon. It is fashioned by other mental causes and conditions. It is unstable. Its very nature is subject to decline and cessation. Another important attribute of the happiness of jhana is that it exists on the level of feeling or sensation, vedana. It arises as a result of cognizing sense objects or of experiencing the pleasure of sense objects. From this perspective, the happiness of jhana shares some attributes with sense pleasure. In other words, it is a form of pleasurable sensation, sukha vedana. For this reason, the first 9 forms of happiness can all be classified as happiness dependent on the cognition of sense objects. And so now I will be reading, supplement the excerpts from Nikāya Gata Sati Sutta, Majjhima Nikāya 119, which has some good advice on mindfulness and meditation, and also includes a section on the 4 jhanas. And this, I'll just note as I go through, I'll be skipping around to keep it from going on too long. And this is translated by Ajahn Ṭhitapañño. Majjhima Nikāya 119, Mindfulness Immersed in the Body. I have heard that on one occasion the Blessed One was staying near Savatthi in Jeta's grove, Anathapindika's monastery. Now at that time, a large number of monks, after the meal, on returning from their alms round, had gathered at the meeting hall when this discussion arose. Isn't it amazing, friends? Isn't it astounding? The extent to which mindfulness immersed in the body, when developed and pursued, is said by the Blessed One who knows, who sees, the Worthy One, rightly self-awakened, to be of great fruit and great benefit. And this discussion came to no conclusion. Then the Blessed One, emerging from his seclusion in the evening, went to the meeting hall, and on arrival sat down on a seat made ready. As he was sitting there, he addressed the monks. For what topic are you gathered together here? And what was the discussion that came to no conclusion? Just now, Lord, after the meal, on returning from our alms round, we gathered at the meeting hall when the discussion arose. Isn't it amazing, friends? Isn't it astounding? The extent to which mindfulness immersed in the body, when developed and pursued, is said by the Blessed One who knows and sees, worthy and rightly self-awakened, to be of great fruit and great benefit. This was the discussion that had come to no conclusion when the Blessed One had arrived. The Blessed One said, and how is mindfulness immersed in the body developed? How is it pursued so as to be of great fruit and great benefit? There is the case where a monk, having gone to the wilderness, to the shade of a tree, or to an empty building, sits down folding his legs crosswise, holding his body erect, and establishing mindfulness to the fore. Always mindful, he breathes in. Mindful, he breathes out. Breathing in long, he discerns, I am breathing in long. Or breathing out long, he discerns, I am breathing out long. Or breathing in short, he discerns, I am breathing in short. Or breathing out short, he discerns, I am breathing out shorts. He trains himself, I will breathe in sensitive to the entire body. He trains himself, I will breathe out sensitive to the entire body. He trains himself, I will breathe in calming bodily fabrication. He trains himself, I will breathe out calming bodily fabrication. And as he remains thus heatful, ardent, and resolute, any memories and resolves related to the household life are abandoned. And with their abandoning, his mind gathers and settles inwardly, grows unified and concentrated. This is how a monk develops mindfulness immersed in the body. And further, when walking, the monk discerns, I am walking. When standing, he discerns, I am standing. When sitting, he discerns, I am sitting. When lying down, he discerns, I am lying down. Or however his body is disposed, that is how he discerns it. And as he remains thus heatful, ardent, and resolute, any memories and resolves related to the household life are abandoned. and with their abandoning, his mind gathers and settles inwardly, grows unified and concentrated. This is how a monk develops mindfulness immersed in the body. And further, when going forward and returning, he makes himself fully alert. When looking toward and looking away, when bending and extending his limbs, when carrying his outer cloak, his upper robe, and his bowl, when eating, drinking, chewing, and savoring, when urinating and defecating, when walking and standing, sitting, falling asleep, and waking up, talking and remaining silent, he makes himself fully alert. And as he remains thus heedful, ardent, and resolute, any memories and resolves related to the household life are abandoned, and with their abandoning, his mind gathers and settles inwardly, grows unified and concentrated. This is how a monk develops mindfulness immersed in the body. And further, the monk reflects on this very body, from the soles of the feet on up, from the crown of the head on down, surrounded by skin, and full of various kinds of unclean things. In this body there are head hairs, body hairs, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, tendons, bones, bone marrow, kidneys, heart, liver, pleura, spleen, lungs, large intestines, small intestines, gorge, feces, bile, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, fat, tears, skin oil, saliva, mucus, fluid in the joints, urine. Just as if a sack with openings at both ends were full of various kinds of grains, wheat, rice, mung beans, kidney beans, sesame seeds, husked rice, and a man with good eyesight pouring it out would reflect, this is wheat, this is rice, these are mung beans, these are kidney beans, these are sesame seeds, this is husked rice. In the same way, the monk reflects on this very body, from the soles of the feet on up, from the crown of the head on down, surrounded by skin and full of various kinds of unclean things. In this body there are head hairs, body hairs, nails, and so forth. And further, the monk contemplates this very body, however it stands, however it is disposed in terms of properties. In this body there is the earth property, the liquid property, the fire property, and the wind property. Just as a dexterous butcher or his apprentice, having killed a cow, would sit at a crossroads cutting it up into pieces, the monk contemplates this very body, however it stands, however it is disposed in terms of properties. In this body there is the earth property, the liquid property, the fire property, and the wind property. And as he remains thus heedful, ardent, and resolute, any memories and resolves related to the household life are abandoned, and with their abandoning his mind gathers and settles inwardly, grows unified and concentrated. This is how a monk develops mindfulness immersed in the body. And further, as if he were to see a corpse cast away in a charnel ground, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days dead, bloated, livid, and festering, he applies it to this very body. This body too, such is its nature, such is its future, such its unavoidable fate. Or again, as if he were to see a corpse cast away in a charnel ground, picked at by crows, vultures, and hawks, by dogs, hyenas, and various other creatures. A skeleton smeared with flesh and blood connected with tendons. A fleshless skeleton smeared with blood connected with tendons. A skeleton without flesh or blood connected with tendons. Bones detached from their tendons scattered in all directions. Here a hand bone, there a foot bone, here a shin bone, there a thigh bone, here a hip bone, there a backbone, here a rib, there a chest bone, here a shoulder bone, there a neck bone, here a jawbone, there a tooth, here a skull. The bones whitened somewhat like the color of shells, piled up more than a year old, decomposed into a powder. He applies it to this very body. This body too, such is its nature, such its future, such its unavoidable fate. And as he remains thus heedful, ardent, and resolute, any memories and resolves related to the household life are abandoned, and with their abandoning his mind gathers and settles inwardly, grows unified and concentrated. This is how a monk develops mindfulness immersed in the body. And now there's a section on the 4 jhanas. And further, quite secluded from sensuality, secluded from unskillful qualities, he enters and remains in the 1st jhana, rapture and pleasure born of seclusion, accompanied by directed thought and evaluation. He permeates and pervades, suffuses and fills this very body with the rapture and pleasure born of seclusion, just as if a dexterous bathman or bathman's apprentice would pour bath powder into a brass basin and knead it together, sprinkling it again and again with water, so that his bald bath powder, saturated, moisture-laden, permeate within and without, would nevertheless not drip. Even so, the monk permeates this very body with the rapture and pleasure born of seclusion. There is nothing of his entire body unpervaded by rapture and pleasure born of seclusion. And as he remains thus heedful, ardent, and resolute, any memories and resolves related to the household life are abandoned, and with their abandoning, his mind gathers and settles inwardly, grows unified and concentrated. This is how a monk develops mindfulness immersed in the body. And then just note that it goes through jhanas 2 through 4, and the Buddha praises again and again mindfulness immersed in the body, ending with listing 10 benefits of mindfulness immersed in the body. Monks, for one in whom mindfulness immersed in the body is cultivated, developed, pursued, given a means of transport, giving a grounding, steadied, consolidated, and well undertaken, 10 benefits can be expected. Which 10? 1. He conquers displeasure and delight, and displeasure does not conquer him. He remains victorious over any displeasure that has arisen. 2. He conquers fear and dread, and fear and dread do not conquer him. He remains victorious over any fear and dread that have arisen. 3. He is resistant to cold and heat, hunger and thirst, the touch of gadflies and mosquitoes, wind and sun, and creeping things, to abuse of hurtful language. He is the sort that can endure bodily feelings that when they arise are painful, sharp, stabbing, fierce, distasteful, disagreeable, deadly. 4. He can attain at will, without trouble or difficulty, the 4 jhanas, heightened mental states, providing a pleasant abiding in the here and now. And then I'll just note that the 5th benefit is wielding manifold supernormal powers. The 6th is divine ear. The 7th is knowing the awareness of other beings. 8, recollecting past lives. 9, divine eye. And then 10, benefit 10, through the ending of effluence, he remains in the effluent free awareness release and discernment release, having known and realized them for himself, right in the here and now. Monks, for one in whom mindfulness immersed in the body is cultivated, developed, pursued, given a means of transport, given a grounding, steady, consolidated, and well undertaken, these 10 benefits can be expected. This is what the Blessed One said. Gratify the monk's delight in the Blessed One's words. So these are the reflections. Comments, questions, reflections?
Maybe I missed it, but there's a section in there as well. I think it's very profound. That is between the jhanas and the 10. That he says that there's one who practices all those practices, partakes of all qualities necessary for penetration of true knowledge, or what is it?
Actually, I have it, yeah.
Yeah, it's very, very important section. And then there's the 3 similarities, how Mark can not overtake you.
Yeah, I have that quote here. It's monks, whoever develops Whoever develops and pursues mindfulness immersed in the body encompasses whatever skillful qualities are on the side of clear knowing. Just as whoever pervades the great ocean with his awareness encompasses whatever rivulets flow down into the ocean. In the same way, whoever develops and pursues mindfulness immersed in the body encompasses whatever qualities are on the side of clear knowing.